Hi guys, welcome to another prototyping video. And in this video, we're going to build the iOS page transition inside of Protopie. If you've ever used Protopie before, you may be familiar with its ability to transition between scenes and probably are aware that it's not quite the right transition that you get inside of an iOS app when you effectively transition from one to the other and you get that kind of view that kind of overlaps the other view and it's kind of like animating away. So we're going to actually create that iOS transition inside of Protopie in a much more custom way. But I'm just going to kind of show you both of them. If you're not familiar with that, I'm going to show you kind of the standard way that we do it, which is a kind of okay for, click-through prototypes, but it's a bit weird. And I'm going to show you actually a really cool way of doing this transition that I think probably nobody has ever thought of doing a transition like this before. Okay. And I literally just invented it when I was trying to figure out this thing. I thought, I wonder if you can do this. And then it worked, which was amazing. So that's coming up in this video. You really don't want to miss this. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Okay, so I've got my Pie file here. So I've got a really basic app. I've just got two views. I've got kind of this photo looking app, just so it kind of whips up. And we've got this carousel of images at the top here. And I'm just going to do a really simple interaction where I'm going to be able to click on this image here, the image of the flowers or colored leaves. They're not really flowers. And we're going to transition to this kind of larger view of that same image. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to do it the way you might do it in Protopie in the really kind of quick way. As you can see, I've got two scenes here, view one and view two. So I'm just going to come to view one and I'm going to come over and add a tap trigger. Actually, I'm just going to select the image first. So there's a couple of different ways you can kind of add interactions in Protopie. You can either just come here and add a tap trigger and then kind of choose your layer, or you can do it the other way around, which is where you select the object first without moving it. And then you go to your trigger panel and then you add your tap trigger and you can see that it's pre-selected. Okay. So, and I've been really bad here. I haven't named any of my layers. Please name your layers. It's all right for something quick like this. So I'm not really showing you the correct way of doing it. But as you can see, we've got the layer selected that we want. Okay. So we've got our tap trigger added to this image. And I just want to simply transition to this second view. So I'm going to come into my responses. I'm going to add a jump response. And the jump response is basically the response that allows you to go from scene to scene to scene to scene in Protopie. Okay, so I'm going to select my view 2, which is the only scene that's available. Obviously, you can't select the same scene. And you can see here, I've got a bunch of pre-built transitions. We've got the smart transition, which is what it defaults to, which is what Protopie's version of the Figma Smart Animate is. Okay, so you can actually do Smart Animate inside of Protopie. We're not going to use that for this particular transition. We're just going to use a slide in. So this is going to be the first half of our transition. Slide in, and you can see you've got a few options here: slide right to left to right, up to down, all those kind of things. We're going to come in from right to left. And that's what we're going to do on that. Let's kind of open up preview here and just see what that looks like. So you can see here that I tap it and I go to my second view. We're going to come over to the second scene and we're going to use this arrow button here. We're just going to do the reverse of the transition. Okay. So again, I'm going to find my button here. I'm going to add a tap trigger. I'm going to add that jump response again. And I've got two options here. I can either choose view 1 or I can actually choose previously shown scene. So if you've got lots of views and you're not sure where the user's coming from inside of the last view, then you can use this. So I'm going to choose previously shown scene here. Okay, let's come back to the view 1, open up preview. And I'm just going to tap my image and I'm going to tap back. Okay, so you see there, I forgot to put got to put the transition on. It's defaulted to smart transition, and it's not really working because it doesn't have the layers, the corresponding layers in both views. And it's just choose slide out. That's what I want. And I want it to come from left to right. Okay, go back to view 1, open up preview. So tap my image and it slides in, and then tap my back button and it slides out. Now, there's some problems with this, okay? And the main problem is we've got this tab bar, and the tab bar shouldn't really, in a real app, the tab bar doesn't move. It doesn't kind of like animate off left and another new tab bar comes in, which is exactly what's happening here, as you can see, which is a bit rubbish, really. So we're going to build a custom transition to kind of get over that. The other thing, if I just tap this, I mean, it's not too noticeable, but sometimes if you've got the underlying view, which is the same color as the view on top, it's actually quite hard to see the transition. So what we're going to do is going to add a little tint on the underlying view, so it kind of goes into like this shadow mode, which just gives a little bit of a break between when the new view is coming over. You can kind of see the view underneath. And also that view underneath is going to animate away as well. So if you open up your iPhone or even your Android phone, I think the transitions are pretty similar. You'll see that the underlying view kind of moves as well. And we're going to connect all that up with very few interaction. So that's kind of the cool bit. So let's kind of start doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my view 2, and I want this whole view. So I've actually got it already wrapped in a group called view 2. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to bring it over to the first scene. I'm going to paste that in. Okay, so that's just going to sit on top. And I want it to actually sit underneath the tab bar. We've got this tab bar, which, as you know, we don't want to move. So that's going to stay static. We need to wrap everything else in another group. So this is my other view. I'm going to call this view 1. View 1. Okay, so now I've got my 2 views. And I'm actually going to take view 2, and I'm just going to move it off to the right-hand side. Okay, so that's going to sit off canvas, right? And actually, if we bring open preview, you can see, you can't see it. It's all looking like the first view. Okay. Okay, so we've got that bit done. So we can still use this existing tap trigger. I'm just going to turn off the jump trigger here. So I can just turn off that switch. That basically disables it. And I'm still going to use the same tap trigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a move response. And you might think I'm going to add the move response to view 2, but I'm not. I'm going to add it to view 1. All will become clear. Bear with me. Okay. So I'm going to find my view 1. So remember, that's the current view, and I'm going to move it to -100. Okay. So that's going to go off just slightly off to the left. Let's just preview that. And if we tap it, we can see it just goes a little kink to the left. Okay, what I also want to do, as I said previously, I want to put a tint on it. So I'm just going to draw a basic rectangular shape, which is going to be the whole size of the view. I'm going to make this black, going to make it 20% fill. And I'm going to turn the opacity down to 0. Okay, so I'm just going to control the opacity. So when the opacity comes up to 100, it's only going to get to 20%. Opacity because I've got a 20% on the fill. Okay, let's turn that back down, and I'm going to put that inside of the view 1. And it's just going to sit on the top. We can call this tint. Okay, so got that kind of set up. Now, what you might be inclined to do is to add an opacity to that. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to add an opacity here, and I'm going to bring it up to 100. And we can kind of see this. If I just hit this image, you can see that the tint kind of comes up. So that's what we might do. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to remove that opacity from there because we're going to do it a very different way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a chain trigger. Now, if you don't know what chain triggers are, they're basically the ability to connect the attribute of one object to the attribute of another object. So as the name implies, you're kind of chaining these two things together, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to chain to the view 1's move response, okay? So that's moving off to the left-hand side. Okay. So let's find view 1. And we're actually going to chain its X property because that's the thing we're kind of moving. Okay, so basically we're saying that when view 1's X property moves, we're going to do a bunch of other stuff. So we're going to add another move response. And this is going to be view 2. Okay, so we're going to chain view 2 to view 1. So the first part of chain is going to be, it's called range 1, and that's the range of the, let's say, the parent object. So it's very much a bit like parenting in After Effects if you use. So this is the range of the parent. So as you can see here, we're moving to from 0 to minus 100. So we're going to put that in here as well. So when the parent object moves from 0 to minus 100, we want this other object to move in its specific way. And it can be different value. So we know that our view 2 is currently at position 390. We want it to go to position 0. We want it to come all the way onto the screen. So that's what we're going to put in here. So in the X value, its starting position is 390. And its finishing position is 0. Okay. Okay, something else I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the duration here to 0.5. This is on the move object for the view 1. I'm actually going to change the easing curve to an ease out as well. Okay, so now let's just check what we've done. So on tap, we're going to move view 1 to minus 100. When that happens, that's going to trigger this chain trigger. And it's going to move view 2 to the position 0. Okay, so that's give that a test. So we open up preview here, and I'm going to hit my object, and there you go. You can see now we've got this kind of sliding transition. I'll actually just slow it down because you can change the playback speed inside of ProApply. Let's slow it down to half speed, so you can see it. Tap it, and you can see that that's kind of moving. Now, we want to bring that tint thing in, right? So we just want to kind of tint the background a little bit. Purely optional, but what it does, it shows you how you can connect multiple objects to the same thing. Okay, so inside this chain response, we're going to use an opacity response, and we're going to attach that to our tint layer. And again, we need to put in the starting value. So we know our starting value for our first object is 0 to minus 100, same range. You could change this range if you wanted to. We're going to leave it as it is. I mean, you could do it to minus 50. That's, that it will just like take that section of the movement and it will apply whatever you want to that section. But we're going to keep it like a one-to-one mapping. And our starting opacity, as we know, is 0. And we're going to bring it up to 100. Okay, so let's have a look at that and see if that's working. So we're going to tap our image, and you can see, hopefully, the tint is kind of coming up. I can make it a bit more pronounced. Let's make the tint a bit darker, just so you can kind of see that it's definitely working. And there you can see that now. It's really, really kind of... Okay, let's knock that back down, because that's a bit of an insane tint. Back to 20. 20, please. There you go. Okay, so we've got the first half of the transition. So we now want to reverse it. Now, if you was doing this like the other way, where you're actually moving all of the objects, you'd have to reverse all those things. We do have a response called reset, and reset is really good because it resets all of the attributes to an object back to their original state when the prototype loaded. So as long as you're not doing anything with any start triggers to manipulate objects, which I do sometimes, you can use so we're going to use reset here. But you still have to reset every object. So you can see we've got two things going on here. We're moving a view, and we're also changing the opacity of the tint. So you'd have to add 2 resets to that. But we're going to be able to do it with 1. Okay. So we're going to find our button here. So that's our rounded button. So this is on the second view. We're going to add a tap trigger to that. And we're going to add a reset. And we're going to reset view 1, right? Because view 1 is the one that's driving all of this animation. So we're going to find view 1. And we're going to change the interpolation, so the easing curve, to ease out again. And we're going to have the duration the same, 0.5. And what's going to happen is when we reset the first view, chain is going to work in reverse. And it's actually going to move view 1 back to its original state. But it's also going to change the opacity to that tint inside to its original state as well. And you're doing this all with just one response. Okay, so let's check that out. So we're going to do the first half where we open it up. And we're running at half speed here just so you can see it. And then when we hit the back button, we'll reverse it. So in and out. Let me just bring up the tint again, just so it's super obvious. In we go. And out. So I think that's pretty cool. I've never done it like this before in my life. I just invented that like this morning. And that's a really cool way. Now, obviously, just open it up again. Because we're using two views, because we're using two groups instead of these two scenes, it enables us to keep the tab bar in place, which is obviously like the main reason why we were doing it. So you can see now it looks a lot more realistic. And if I just bring it back up to 1x, we can see that kind of working in real time. And we can take that tint back down because it's a bit strong, in my view. No pun intended. Okay, there you go. So that brings us to the end of this tutorial. And hopefully it shows you how you can really do things in many different ways inside a prototype. You can also achieve maximum fidelity when you're doing your prototypes. You can get things that really do work like the real thing. You could, of course, do this in Figma. You could do this with Smart Animate as well. So that's totally doable. But what's really cool here is you can start to really build on this with other interactions. And it's always been a bit of a thing where we as a community using ProtoPie wanted this ability to have a bit more control over the way transitions work. But that doesn't mean we can't do it while we're waiting. ProtoPie has so many capabilities to give us the ability to do things however we want to. There's always a solution. Okay, so hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please give it a like. Tell all of your friends. Let's try and get these videos out there into the design community. I really would love designers to really embrace other tools other than Figma when they're trying to achieve their designs. Figma is a great tool and ProtoPie is a great tool, and there's lots of great tools out there. So let's kind of take advantage of all of them rather than being too siloed inside of one. Okay, so I'll leave it there. Take it easy and I'll see you next time.